Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Collective Wednesday evening broadcast. And broadcast, do we call it a broadcast?
I don't know. You sounded very BBC then.
Yeah. I realized it as I said it. Chat, coffee table chat, heart-centered, loving medicine being poured out here, and hopefully soothes the souls of our beautiful teachers who's been out there grinding day in, day out, looking after our beautiful tamariki. So Lisa and Anja, it is so wonderful to have you. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm really good. Getting back into the swing of life and trying not to go on the crazy journey with the speed.
Yes, I know, right? Anja, this is your first time on one of our lives and our Conscious Collective show. It's so wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I just about an hour ago, I was listening to Brené Brown, and she started her own podcast about 2 months ago. And I was listening to her first one, where she was really sharing her fear and her insecurity about doing this podcast, and she calls it FFT. And I can't say the first F, but leave it up to your imagination. And the second F stands for first, and the T stands for time. So the first time. Yes, and that's how I feel too.
Oh, it's good. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Anja. I'm excited to delve into all the work, the wonderful work you've been doing at the Heart School and some of the inspiring stuff that you've done in our sector previously. And and kind of introduce our viewers to actually that incredible path of work. And I know you've written a new resource, a new book, which is super cool. So lots to delve into. Lisa, what's been alive for you kind of in this week? What's been happening for you?
Well, I work with a lot of families who are under the wing of Oranga Tamariki. So it's been great to start to plan for the time that we can all be together again instead of just doing screen and phone. So it's actually feeling like there'll be lots of family reunions with them. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I've been spending some additional time with all of my grandies, which is great. There's 8 of them. So that seems to have filled the time up really, really well.
8 grandchildren.
Boom. Yes.
That is it. That feels like that's just a full-time job right there.
Well, it could be. It could be for sure. I'm not ready to do full-time grandparenting yet, but I have had the pleasure for a couple of years of one of my kids living with me with 2 of hers. So to be that hands-on again with Lily's is great. Absolutely great.
You know, one thing I've been considering, and I'm always continually rethinking how we do early childhood education within Aotearoa. And one thing is, within the world, really, how important it is for us to, from the beginning, to enroll entire families and not just the child. And when you talk about your grandchildren and our mokopuna, I just think how important it is to let that whānau know that we really want your whole family to be part of this. Who is the grandmother or the grandfather or the auntie and the uncle who would like to be a part of this whole world, so that we can build that intergenerational ties?
Absolutely. For a long time, I've been singing the song of you can't only work with the parents, you can't only work with the kids, you actually need to work with an entire whānau. The more extended it is, the better it is. I know that it was quite unusual when I was working with one beautiful mum and dad and their kids. I invited the rest of the whānau to come for the coaching. And they said, "Oh, we're allowed to do that?" I'm like, "Well, of course we are." So everybody came, everybody turned up. And what that means is you've got all of their children, not just the ones in the one family I'm visiting, who are going to benefit from that. But the uncles and aunties and everybody in the family are going to all take the same approach if they love it. And they do love it because it's all based on loving, gentle care.
And in the process, you're interweaving the whānau values. You get to really understand the makeup of the whānau. It's not just this kind of one-sided exchange of ideas.
No, I would never go in with like a program to deliver. It is actually just like doesn't sit well with me at all. I go in with a lot of ideas and I find out who they are and the way that they think and what they value. And then I look at my kete to see what I've got that will match what they want. And so it's an invitation to rummage in there with me and pick the bits that they like, and then we make something really cohesive for them from that. So in the end, it feels like it's theirs, totally theirs. They picked it, they resonate with it. You know, we're the same. We all want to go and join up to things that we resonate with. Everybody's the same.
Do you think I feel like it's a real re-education almost. The onus is not, you know, we might say, well, you know, families just don't really care anymore and they don't really want to be involved. They're busy. They've got even retired grandmothers now are kind of like too busy to go, you know, so we can make up these excuses. But I do think that the onus is on us as educational, like professionals, to educate the whānau that, no, actually, this is what is best for the child. This is what we expect in this place. And then create the environment where they can come and sit and have a cup of tea and they feel welcome. And
absolutely. And I think the thing, I still remember way back to when my children were little and I joined the kindy committee and I was told you can't get the parents out here to anything. And I thought, well, perhaps have you asked them what they want to come to? So we're now talking like 37 years ago. Have you asked them what they want to do? And I made this humongous list of potential things that they might be interested into. And this will kind of date the story because microwaves were brand new and they were saying you can make a roast in a microwave. Like, whoa, that's a bad idea. But, you know, I put like how to cook a roast in a microwave on the list. All these things, anything I could think of. And the two things that everybody put a tick next to that came back, it was like dealing with anger at my house and building my children's self-esteem. They were the two things. So we found one speaker who would cover those two topics in one night. And we had the place was jammed. There was about 70 parents there. So if you listen to people, you ask them, there was that line on the bottom. It was like, is there anything else you would like to come out to? Nobody really came up with anything, but we had just happened to hit on two things that was of interest. So I think if you ask, people are happy to tell you. Yeah,
and listen and then provide. And play the role of the village. Play the role of the provocateurs, I suppose, the professionals, like living up to that idea of like, we do understand what's best for children as early childhood educators, and maybe some of these parents have come from whole different worlds where they haven't been exposed to the understanding of mindful and deep relationships with children. And so we have this beautiful opportunity as one of the first people that they're going to trust deeply with their child, with their children, that we can be this beautiful light. I think it's one of those points of contact that parents are open for transformation and we get to step into it.
I think that's true, but I think that at the same time that we might have some specific cutting edge learning that would be brilliant to share, we always have to remember that they come into the room with wisdom that we don't have.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, and so it's a partnership with them. They bring their wisdom and we bring ours, and we dish it up in service of the children and the family.
I love that. Anja, you started off in early childhood. Tell us a little bit about your story, because it might be quite new for a lot of us. So how did you kind of get into early childhood education, and what drove you, and what are you doing now?
Okay. Well, I was born in the Netherlands, and that's where I grew up. And I had a real free-range childhood, as they would call that now. So, you know, you go outside and play until the light post comes on, or your tummy was rumbling. That's time to go home. And I grew up in the Netherlands where children, as soon as they start walking, they get a bicycle, basically. So you're very young already on a bike, and that gives you independence because you're not dependent on mom or dad taking you to your friends. You can just hop on your bike. You go on a bike to school. You come home on the bike. You just go where you want to go, and I mean we would always make sure parents know where we are. But it comes with freedom and independence at a very young age. And I moved to New Zealand, and my wedding day was my farewell day. And my husband always keeps saying to the kids, "We're still on our wedding honeymoon."
You never went back after the honeymoon.
And so that's coming up 30 years this year, actually, at the end of the year. But when I came here, I got really, really, really homesick. And I thought I was homesick for my family and my siblings, my family, and of course I missed them. But looking back now, over that journey, I think it was more of a homesickness to my childhood, to leaving that child behind. It felt like moving to New Zealand was physically leaving the kid behind. And I didn't realize all that. I was just feeling miserable and all that. And then I became a mom. And I had this little baby, and I started realizing this is what I'm missing. I'm missing my childhood. I'm missing the child within me. Because all of a sudden I was married in a different country and had to grow up, and I buried that child. And that's when I started realizing I don't want to bury that child. That child is still within me. And so I started unlayering and letting that child come out. And I remember that on my little report cards, it always said very playful, which was not a good thing. And I'm very proud about it, actually, being playful. So that playfulness started coming out as my children started growing up as well. And I realized that what I had as a child, this independence and this playing in the woods and playing with the neighborhood kids, where no adult was telling you what to do. We made up our own rules in those days. And that's what I wanted for my children. And as I started set up my own preschool, I started doing what I felt I wanted for my children. And I think looking back at it, it's that homesickness that I had, which was basically a grievance for my childhood that was gone, because I had grown into an adult, is what actually got me to create these preschools that were very nature orientated, because I had a childhood in nature, in the woods, in the fields, and that's how I started creating these outdoor environments, because that's what I wanted for my children. And then one day I read this article in an overseas magazine, and it was by a guy called Richard Loof. And I was so I was like, oh my gosh, I could have written that article. This is so me. He just put it so beautiful in words, what I had been feeling all those years. So I got the book, which came from Amazon, and this was the first print of the book, so it's quite a while ago. Cost me a fortune getting it sent over hardcover. I read it in one go, and I knew this is what I need to do, reconnecting the children with nature. Because initially I thought it was New Zealand. I didn't realize that it was actually a generation of children starting to grow up now. I think when my kids were little, it's kind of the first kind of generation starting to grow up with not that much nature anymore in their environment. So we say childhood has changed, but childhood, it's not, or the child has changed. It's not the child that has changed, but it's the childhood that has changed. The environment has changed. Right. Yeah, the hood has changed, not the child. Children are still children. They want to play and they laugh and they run and they jump and they play hide and seek and imagination, creativity. But the hood, the environment has changed because the times have changed. There's stranger danger. We're all busy. We drive them to the soccer practice. There's no time for that free play. It's all play dates. I didn't grow up with play dates. We just knocked on the door. Can Johnny come and play? And that was actually really good to see during the lockdown, to see the kids in the neighborhood actually doing that again. Yeah, because there were no cars. There was nothing on the road. You could roam the street again. That was a good thing about the lockdown, actually. Yeah.
I love that. This is kind of early 2000s now, aren't we talking, Anja?
Yeah.
And you're one of the main things that you did, and you're probably one of the leaders, if we want to call it that, of creating these beautiful natural outdoor environments, grass everywhere. And but what I noticed from what you were telling me previously is that you didn't over-design the playground.
We didn't design at all. So we bought this old villa that came with a backyard. It was just grass. It was just grass. So my husband dug a hole in there and threw some sand in there. It was literally a box, a square box. And we threw the sand in there. We borrowed some outdoor toys. The little tykes in those days. Put them out there on the grass field. The Ministry of Education came. Well, they're not listening, and I got the tick. They left. I chucked everything in the garage, and then we said, "Okay, so now we've got this big green grass, like field of grass. What are we going to do? And let's just see what the children want and what they're going to do." And so we just watched the children, observed the children, and that was the start of the journey. And we probably had the cheapest playground of all the early childcare centres, but I think we had the most needed, greatest child. Yeah, we just started bringing in driftwood and boulders, shrubs, bushes. The water trough that we got, because for the tick, we filled it up with water, put plants in there, put goldfish in there. We even had a turtle in there, which is the subject of a book. There's a children's book out written about that turtle in a little water trough. And the sandbox, we then covered it, put the planks over it, so it was kind of deck, which became a stage for the children where they could, do their performances. And later on, we put a peace pool on it, so it became a peace pool deck or peace deck for celebrations and rituals. But to this day, I don't think it's got a sand pit. We had sand and mud, but it was just part of the garden. Yeah, it was all natural.
So you were designing, instead of a designed playground, you were creating a garden for pottering, playing, and relationships.
Yeah, and we never called it playground. We always called it our garden. And it wasn't a garden like a landscape garden that was for the children to look at or as background. It was done with the children. So we had planter boxes and everything. And out of the 50 seedlings, maybe only 10 survived because the children did everything. They grew the seedlings, they planted the seedlings, and little thing. It's even hard for me sometimes when I plant a seedling and it doesn't go. But it wasn't about the end product. It was about the doing and involving the children. So, yeah, and it's always been like that with everything we did. I remember at Little Earth, when we started at Little Earth, we sat down with a big piece of paper and said to the children, what do you want? What would you like in your environment? Yeah. So we did it always with the children and the parents, but the children.
Can you remember what they wanted?
Yeah, they wanted, building huts, things to climb on, to jump off.
To move.
Yeah.
They ask for water.
I can't remember. I think so, yeah. But they wouldn't, no water trough. We actually got, one of these calves trough, those big concrete that the farmers have. We got one of those from farmlands or whatever the place is called. Got it put in there, and that got, goldfish and turtles and frogs, and we'll put it all in there. Yeah. And I'm not saying here all these childcare centers should go and do it. our children were 3 years plus. I have to say that too. So we didn't have the little crawling and toddlers. The children are a little bit older. And also, you got to create a certain culture for safety reasons as well. I mean, I don't want that on my conscience that everybody now goes and fills up their water trough with goldfish. But that's what we did. Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine, David Spraggs, saying exactly the same about you build the culture so that the safety stuff is second nature, because he's huge on fire around, for early childhood. And he would have a fire on a regular basis for the kids. And he said everybody knew the rules. So you're right. You have to build that in.
You have to build that culture. And it doesn't happen overnight. But once you have it, you'll find that that's your biggest teacher, because we can say as adults to the children 20 times, don't touch it, don't touch. But it only needs one of their little peers to say it to them. One of the other children to say it to them, and because that's community. Yeah. Yeah,
that's beautiful, and I agree with you. There's the culture is so important, and it does take consistency from the whole team to understand how to implement this. And if you do put in the mahi up front, then it really does it does. And then, like you said, the children become the teachers. They love letting everyone know what it takes in this space to kind of create and belong.
Yeah.
We put up that tonight, one of the parts of the evening was about small noticings and how they lead to transformations. I love, Anja, what you're talking about how you listen to all the detail and what the children wanted, and how that led to a big transformation of a garden place for them to play in. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and you were talking about the parents in the village, because the children take it home. And I'll never forget one day where I had this family who was very, I have to be careful with what I say. Anyways, at the end, when they were leaving, there was a diplomatic family, so they were traveling from country to country with placements and that. She said, you've taught me so much about the child, about childhood. Because I'll never forget how she arrived one day and took her heeled shoes off and started jumping in the puddles with us. Just like, she would have probably never done that. Yeah, and that's the transformation as well. That's when you know you're doing the right thing. Yes, got it. Yeah.
Nice.
So you've since kind of moved to more of a support role for kaiako and teachers and centers through the Heart School. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind the Heart School, because I think it's a fabulous resource.
So after I read that book, Last Child of the Woods, it so connected with me, and I felt a little bit of a calling, like I need to be the evangelist for connecting children with nature. I actually did a TEDx talk about that too.
Right.
Yeah. I think I was one of the first TEDx talkers.
Give us the 5-minute version of your 20-minute talk.
About the like I always say, we're in business to create memories for the children. Like that, for children to create memories, because that's what it is for me. Your childhood takes you by the hand for the rest of your life. So it's important that our children have magical moments that create memories, because that's what goes in here, not in here. That's what goes in here. That's what we still remember. And so as I was doing managing these preschools, there was a lot of interest, and people started calling up and wanted to come and have a look and all that. And I felt like they come with their cameras and they take photos, but it's all head stuff. They see something, but they don't see the unseen. And like we were talking about, it's a community. You can't It won't work if you just go back to your center and say, I saw this amazing center with this amazing outdoor environment, and if we put this there and we put that there, now we've got that too. It doesn't work like that. It's all about the team and the values and the philosophy, the attitude. So there was a lot in here, and it was not just me, it's my whole team. I had a fantastic team. I wouldn't be here today talking about all this if it wasn't for my team that I had. It was all, we did it all together. But when I left, I had all this in my head, and I had a chat with Kimberly, and we I said, look, why don't we start putting this on paper and all that? Kimberly's very busy with her PD and at the nest, and so I started doing that, and then Tessa came on board as well, and so it's the three of us, Kimberly, Tessa, and me, were running the Heart School, really wanting to create something that will help the teachers to be a change maker in early childhood. We felt like what's going on in early childhood is not what we would like it to be. So we need to make a change. And we can complain and complain and start, I can just sit here on my chair and complain and all that, but that's not quite me. So I wanted to make a change. And we started the Heart School.
And it seems to be, from what I'm observing and hearing from you with the Heart School, is that you're creating tools for heart-led teachers to actually take this into practice.
Yes. Yeah. So I felt like so Kimberly's so charismatic and so inspirational. And you go to her workshop and you just want to go. You can't wait to get back into your center the following day. But then you hit a wall. That's what it was for me. I walk into my center and then I hit a wall because the others haven't been to that workshop. They haven't felt that energy, or they haven't got an idea what I'm talking about. So that's where I felt if we start following that up with some tools, some concrete things, the hands-on things that they can fall back on, and that give them a little bit of guidance of what this all is, to create those little shifts that we were talking about, the shifts towards the transformation.
What's some of the, show us some of the resources. Do you have any of the resources kind of on hand? Because I know you've got some beautiful heart cards. Do you have?
Yes, yeah, actually I do. Oops, sorry. I actually have, because I'm about to send this off to somebody who ordered that. This is, for example, how do I? The toolkit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a teacher guide, all about looking after our younger tamariki, really from for toddlers. But our latest one is actually the set of cards, and it's a set of cards, and they're written very quirky in, I'd say, Kimberly kind of language. And then we wrote at the back some questions and some little hints. So I can read one out. We call them the BU cards.
The BU cards.
So here's the
That's
BU.
2 words, not 2 letters. 2 words.
BU.
Yeah.
And here's, for example, grit. And the oomph to rise up through challenge and keep going. Growing, G. Resilience, R, the R. N-I, tough, T. Grit. Growing, resilience in tough times. And then at the back, what obstacles have you overcome lately? And obstacles give you options. Keep heart in the hard times. Heart in the hard times. And so we created these for teachers. And we've heard of teams that pick one a week, for example, and use them in their meetings. Or during lockdown, they were sending them around to the teachers, like this is, pick one today, and then they were sharing. Comes with a booklet as well, which talks about a lot of it. They're also coded. So this one is a B. That means stands for belief. So BU, we have a B, an E, a Y, O, U. It's the typical hard school style. And so these ones will also have little letters on there that refer to what it stands for in the booklet. So it's not just a card. It's a mini program, really.
Yeah.
It comes in a stand.
And you have now written a book which is going to complement this, or
yes.
It's not really, it was intended to be a booklet, wasn't it, Anja? But it's turned into a book.
Well, yeah, it was intended to be something like a couple of 10 at the most, but it's turned into 65 pages. And
where did those extra 5 come from? I thought we were talking about 60. Was
I don't know. It would have been 70 if I've put your whole forward in it as well. Lisa has written the forward, and it was a bit long. I had to condense it.
You did a beautiful job with that too.
Thank you.
And you're literally launching it almost tonight. If I'm
yes,
this is the first time that it's coming out, and I've got the cover here. Let me just have a look. So cool. Can you see that on screen?
Yes.
Yes.
A heart that shines, using core values to light your path.
Yeah.
How cool is that? I love the other bit as well, which I like this little bit that you've written here. To all the teachers with deep thoughts churning, belly fires burning, heart banks earning, wisdom cogs turning, and a know thyself yearning, this is about you and for you, from our heart to yours. The Heart School is beautifully written.
Yeah. Credit to Tessa. Tessa's our poet, wordsmith. She writes beautifully and poetically. Yeah.
That's so good. And so it's exciting. Where can people go to get this?
So they can go, yes.
Website?
They can go to the Heart School website. It's not live yet, so I'll probably put it live in the next few days. I actually need to talk to you a little bit about that, because we're gifting the Conscious Collective a copy, a soft copy. Do you call it soft copy? Electronic copy.
Electronic copy
of the teacher guide. Yeah.
So this is exciting. I'll just interlude there, and then we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So for our members of the Heart Tribe, which we spoke about last week, and we'll touch on again soon, which is with this tribe of beautiful mentors. Everyone who signs up to become part of the Heart Tribe will receive this book for as a gift, which I just think is absolutely extraordinary. I'm so excited about that. Sorry, so carry on, Anja.
Yeah, so it's an electronic download for them. Just clarify that.
Yeah. And are you going to make this into a soft cover as well, like an actual book?
Yeah. So those will want I call it a hard copy. You call it a hard copy?
Hard or hard?
Yeah. Both. It's actually both. From our heart to yours. Yeah. So we set out to make this 10 pages, writing about the values. That came about also because we went to Dubai. Tessa and I went to Dubai and did a workshop about values and the importance of who you are is more important than what you do. And so we started writing that, and it turned into 65 pages. We've got these cards that I just showed you, but we also we had these made for Dubai, because we used these what we call value cards. There's 54 of them, and we use them for an activity and exercise. So we thought, that's actually all works really well together. So that's our new toolkit.
So
a Heart That Shines toolkit.
Heart That Shines toolkit, really focusing on values.
On who you are. Being authentic, who you are. And to find out who you are, you need to know your values. You need to find your core values. What makes you happy? What makes you who you are? What's important to you? What matters really? And Lisa, you said it lovely the other day about your your, what do you call it, like when you pass away, your
when your funeral?
yeah.
Oh, my
how you
will?
want to be
You're talking about my
remembered.
will. Oh, how you want to be remembered. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you think about what you'd love people to say about you after you've gone, that will tell you about who you really want to be. And that can guide you to getting really some great clarity around your values and, how you want to build your life.
It's so true. It's, I've been surrounded by, I suppose, values-based organizations and values-based ethics and spirituality for a very long time, as long as I can remember. It's always been something quite hard for me to really distill my core values into a small subset, or even like I have this. It's like I have this felt sense of what it is, but it's quite an interesting exercise to then try and go through the process. So I'm wondering, have you guys done that for yourself, your own personal core values?
I've worked on my virtues, which I tend to say, we've had some great talks this week about virtues and values and how they interface with each other. But and sometimes you would say that they could almost be the same thing. But for me, a long time ago, I looked through the 100 virtues that are in the Virtues Project, and I thought, what's really important? Like you, I could relate to lots and wanted to be lots, but at the top for me were two, and that was excellence and service.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned about that, which is why I love the virtue stuff, is that it's really a fascinating conversation to think about how you keep your core virtues, which you feel passionate about, in balance in life, because you will tend to want to go into overdrive with them. And so if somebody like me's got excellence and service as their core virtues, you could easily burn out because you just keep going all hours, always give a bit more. So that was quite enlightening for me to think about them that way, because I do want enough of me left over for my family, people I love and want to be with. And it's a thing that so many of us do in life. We give out all day long. I know I coach plenty of teachers who come in to see me about their own children. They go, I give out the best of me to everybody else's kids. And then I bring the tired leftovers back through the family door and snap at somebody that made a jam sandwich and didn't clean it up. So understanding that how to balance it, you could take the virtue of moderation and say, well, that will fix everything. I know the first time I was ever introduced to the Virtues Project a long time ago, I started laughing because I said, I'm a bit over the top with so many of the things that I do. I didn't even know that moderation was a virtue. So I've been challenged on that a lot over the years by my friends who think that's pretty amusing. So there's a lot you can learn through sitting down and just looking at the words and thinking about what they mean to you.
Anja, what about you? Have you kind of gone through the exercise? Obviously, you said you went to this workshop in Dubai, and has that helped you kind of extrapolate and put on paper what your core values are?
Yeah, it's not. I didn't went to the workshop. We facilitated the workshop.
Oh, right, you ran it.
Yeah. So using these cards is really, really helpful. And we just picked 54 that we thought as teachers, but there's no right and wrong, and like Lisa said, there's way more than that. And you can go on the internet and Google it. You can go on NVC, and I'm sure Philippa will have way more to add to that, to contribute about the values and needs as part of NVC. So we use these, and I brought it down for myself to honesty and trust, which is quite important for me. Yeah. And once you know that, it kind of helps you when you're thinking, why is this triggering me? Why do I get so upset? Like you said with the moderation, what is this? And then it helps you, it anchors you, because if you then know, oh, it's not this or it's not that, but it's actually because I feel I can't trust them, then you can work on that. You can see how that can help you. What's my need then? You can go back and what's my need? What do I need to meet that?
I have a question. How much do you think core values are innately us, and how much are core values due to the environment that we were raised in? I don't know if you have an answer, but it's a thought for me. Like, how are these values formed? You know, you talk about honesty and trust as a core value, and I tend to think, well, maybe our core values is the mode of operation where we find safety in our space of who we are and how we operate in the world. So, what do you think, Lisa?
Well, I think our values are kind of our virtues in action. I think that we are innately born, and I was told this a long time ago, and I thought, I don't know about this, and I've changed my mind completely. Babies are born with virtues built into them, and the first moment when I really got that, I was watching a video that came from the Pickler Institute, and there was 3 little babies of about 8 months old sitting on a deck with just 2 rattles between the 3 of them. And I started watching, and I was just really interested, just observing. This is where that little small observations or small noticings can lead to big transformations. And I thought, wow, how patient is she waiting for her turn? And then how creative is she picking another toy up and holding it in front of the other babies who had the rattles and waiting for somebody to put their rattle down and take her toy so that she could get the rattle. And I noticed another virtue, and I thought, I'm going to rewatch that whole thing and start ticking them off my list. And in a 10-minute video, there was 33 virtues.
Wow.
8-month-olds. So I think they're built in, but I think the people that we're around and the culture that we come from all then help to build the values that we have, how we apply those things.
Yeah.
How do you see it? How do you see it, Anja?
Yeah, I was going to add to that too, that I think the culture plays a big role, because what could be a value for me may be very different in a very different culture. Even between me as a European Pakeha and a Maori family, some values are quite different. And you also mentioned, Lisa, to me earlier this week, this about honesty and how that can be, honesty is honesty, but one person may put that into action or deal with that in a very different way than you would do that. So your value towards honesty would be different than that person. I didn't want to mention his name, but you can if you want to and elaborate on that one.
I can't actually remember who we were talking about or what we were talking about. I suddenly thought we were talking about a wee girl I was working with.
One of the most mentioned names in the world at the moment.
Oh, okay.
In a bad way.
Are we talking leader of the free world kind of a way?
Yeah, when you were talking about that.
Yeah, let's not go there and open that can of worms. But I can tell you, I was talking to somebody today about relationship with truth and honesty. I have a little girl that I'm working with, and she is in care, and the carer, the mum, is just so hurt that she keeps getting lied to. And I said to her, I understand that you probably grew up in a family where you talked about honesty a lot and how important it was, just never lie to me, all of that. But this little girl has a really different relationship with the truth. The truth can get her into trouble. It can get the police around to your house. Yeah. It can make people stop loving you. So actually, to be street smart, you can't afford to be really honest. It's just not on her radar. She has a different relationship with the truth. Yeah. So our surroundings do really influence us like that.
How do you think we transpose this idea of core values into a team environment where we're talking about core values for our center or core values for our home base, kind of like home pod, or core values just for within our team? Often, I think if we were to do a survey of teachers who are watching to quickly rattle off their core values, they'd have to go to their policy book and have a look, because it becomes paper without this lived experience. So Talk to me a little bit about how you see teams kind of living and extrapolating their core values.
Do you want to go first, Anja?
Okay, that's actually what started this whole value journey for us. Once we identified our values as a setting at the center, it changed a lot for us because it became kind of like a yardstick of measuring decisions that we were making as a team. So let's say we would have had things like kindness and care. So if we were implementing or talking about something, we would always bring it back. It was like a blueprint for us. And to get to, I mean, the question is going to be, well, which one is it going to be? Well, we've got a team of 20 people. We all have different values. We all have our own personal values. And we have a whole chapter about the values for a setting as a center, as a collective, our collective values, which is different from our personal values. Ideally, they overlap, but it doesn't always overlap. And then it's really up to you as an individual how much you accept and can go with, and how much, it's give and take. But going back to the center values, we identified those as a team. We got it down to 4 values, and we created a handout. We had them up on the wall, and they were really used daily, absolutely daily. Like if there were things that we were doing, does it fit with beauty, or does it fit with care? Does it fit with our thoughts about love? But we also had to have the meetings about what does it actually mean? What does that look and feel like in our center? Because it's not just a word, because then it's not of much use. If you just have 4 values, you've got 4 stickies on the wall and you say, I am doing kindness. Doesn't mean anything if you're not kind. So what does that look and feel like? It's about the being.
That's it. It's, I think, one of the most powerful things that you can do with values is you can go, our value is kindness, and then off that set of values, or that particular value, create a set of behaviors, statements that reflect, little statements that become tunes. Like kindness might be the value, but the behavior might be, when the door opens up, our eyes light up, right? Like
exactly.
It's the kindness, but this is what kindness actually looks like.
Yeah.
Or if it's resiliency and grit, it might be that when we're under threat, we move close together. It's that kind of like cues. It's called cues, I suppose, cues and values, to let people that when this happens, then this is what we do. And so it gives people like something tangible to hook on.
It's an anchor. Yeah. It's an anchor for the team. And you can, we had meetings about it. The heart meetings, we used them as topics for heart meetings. But what we also did, Rick, we actually created a survey at one stage, that we sent out to the parents. We had these 4 core values, and we asked them, we had these questions. They were multiple choice questions, and to get an idea from the parents, because we can say that we're kind, but if the parents don't feel the kindness, then we're not really kind, are we? It's the same like, I love the child, but if the child doesn't feel your love, well, then there's something to look at then. So we felt like, well, we're saying, we're doing all these values, or not doing values, we're being. It's about being kind, being caring, being loving. But do the parents feel that too? How do they experience these values in our center? Yeah. And that was very, very interesting, because there's sometimes things you think, you're doing it really well, and it was really interesting. A very worthwhile exercise.
I think when I think about the values, both for individuals and for centers, I'd be guided by the biological imperatives required by the little people that are coming through your door every day. So, Rick, when you say kindness looks like your eyes light up when they come through the door, absolutely, children need to see somebody whose eyes light up for helping them with the attachment that they require. They have a biological need for attachment, but they also have a biological need to be authentically who they are. And you mentioned one of my favourites before we went on air tonight, Gabor Mate, and he talks about the fact that these are the two most basic requirements is authenticity and attachment for children. But if it comes down to a choice, attachment trumps authenticity every time. Mm-hmm. So if children feel judged or wrong for who they are in any way, they will give that up because they require you to love them. Mm-hmm. They will mold themselves so that they can become attached and build a bond, because that's the most essential building block. So for me, the values actually really need to consider the biological imperatives that a little person requires for complete wholeness.
Yeah, it's interesting because literally, I showed you the book that I'm currently rereading, Hold On to Your Kids, Gabor Mate and Gordon Newfield. And this week I have just been really deeply considering attachment, the biological imperatives of the child, and how that overlays with our current system, a way of life. You know, Vince Gomon kind of talked about I think he said the pain of the dysfunctional normal. And it's kind of like this way of life that we've just become so accustomed to. But when your eyes open to actually the biological attachment needs of the child, and then that's overlaid with actually what's happening day to day, it can be quite disconcerting. And I have this feeling that there is a ton of hard-led teachers right now who are turning up to work, and they are deeply feeling the disconnect between the way that the system is run and the biological need for the child. And that can be it can really suppress, and it can be suppressed, and it can kind of like really squash our passion.
Yeah, for sure.
I think to recognize that there's a bit here. I'll just quickly read it. Society has generated economic pressures for both parents to work outside the home when children are very young, but it's also made little provision for the satisfaction of children's needs for emotional nourishment. Surprising though it may seem, early childhood educators, teachers, and psychologists are seldom taught about attachment. In our institutions of childcare and education, there exists no collective consciousness regarding the pivotal importance of attachment relationships. Although many individual caregivers and teachers intuitively grasp the need to form a connection with children, it is not rare for such a person to find themselves at odds with a system that does not support their approach.
Hallelujah.
And I almost had the sense, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up tonight, of grief and the importance of experiencing that collective grief, that right now it is very possible that we are working within a system that is not good for children. And it's really hard to say because we turn up every day and we do our best and we are heart-led and we want the best for children. But until we acknowledge the pain that is also inherently integrated in this way of life right now, feel it, really feel it, and be okay, I think until we do that, we aren't really going to effectively have collective change with what's needed in our sector.
Well, you know, I've been writing some stuff over the last few days, and I've been thinking about the fact that New Zealand has an X factor. We are incredible doers and changers and innovators. You know, we've got this little team of 5 million. We're about the size of Melbourne. And yet we constantly innovate and create and change things. I know when I went up to work in Hawaii for 6 weeks years ago, it was a fantastic trip, but they were fascinated by the ideas that I was bringing to them. And they said, where do you get the stuff? And I'm like, well, I just live at the bottom of the world and we make stuff up that we know works. and there's nobody there with red tape to stop us. So while we're not completely devoid of red tape, we've got a hell of a lot less of it than lots of other countries. So if we are starting to wake up to the fact that we might need to make some changes so that children have their biological needs met, we're better in the world to lead that dance than right here in Aotearoa.
Absolutely. And I remember talking to one of the owners of one of the big childcare chains here. And I kind of talked to him a little bit about regulations. How do you navigate, and how do you feel about some things? And he said, well, I don't really think much about that stuff. Just tell me the rules and I'll play the game. And I thought, wow, childcare is a game. It's not a game. It's not a game. This is the fundamental stuff of living, of philosophy, of our cultural context, of our future, of our now, the quality of life. And I think if we can think together, right, as a collective, we can, like you said, we can come up with different ideas on how to actually match that biological imperative of the child with the way that day-to-day, handling, I suppose, is done.
But Rick, I think we need to look past seeing the child as a bum on a seat and as a product in our business, like the businessman that you were talking about.
It's that when it's the child in, child out model, right? Like child in.
That's about as unattuned as you can possibly get, isn't it?
Becomes numbers on a spreadsheet. It becomes it becomes maximizing efficiency. It's everything that the industrial hangover has left us with.
Yeah, and with the child, you can't give a warranty, you can't give a money back guarantee, you can't do an exchange. You only have one chance. You have the child, the parents, they trust you with their child. So we've got a very, very, very important job to do and look after that child. And we can't mess that up. We can't.
It's the anyway. I'm going back onto these thoughts that I've got in this book. I really do highly recommend it. It's a real paradigm shift in thinking. Hold on to your kids, but it talks about the transmission of attachment from primary caregiver to the village, building a village of attachments, and how delicate that process is, and how important it is that it's led by the parent and not the child. And what we see in group-based childcare right now is that a lot of that disconnection and reattachment is led by the child, because the time hasn't been spent by the parent and the caregiver to build that trusting relationship first. And so that primary attachment is lost. And then there's 10 other competing attachments, like 10 other children competing for that one adult's attention. So it's an insecure void. And attachment game just goes completely haywire, and it really impacts behaviors and centers. It's a whole nother hour of chat, but it's something that I just think is so interesting to think about.
And you get the blind leading the blind in the group.
Yeah,
don't you? And we've got all the children, because the children aren't going to look, because they need the attachment, so they're going to attach to another child.
Absolutely. In the void of attachment, they go into survival instinct, and they will attach to, just like a duckling will attach to the first moving thing that's around, whether it's a duck or not. It is the child will attach to whatever, orient towards whoever is next to them closest. Anyway, we've got a couple of minutes, but I wanted to finish off just with a couple of things. Number one is the Heart Tribe, which we talked about last week. We're kicking into action next week. It's an absolutely exciting venture that we're all jumping into. It's a tribe of mentors. So if you want to know more about that, go to, I'm going to show you our screen here. Do I even have it on here? Maybe not. I'll post a link in the comments, But what it is, it's connecting you as a kayako or your whole team with a tribe of mentors, with Lisa and Anja as part of that, Kimberly and Helen and Penny. And it's really what do we call it? A community of heart-led teachers who are walking each other home, if we want to use Ramdas language. And you have so generously offered in association and partnership with the Heart School, Anja, to give that book that you've just released as a gift to everyone who signs up. We're looking for our first 100 foundational members of the Heart Tribe, so please go and check that out and join us if you want. And the last thing I just want to let everyone know is that we have launched our podcast. So tonight's broadcast, there I go again. Tonight's chat will be available to listen to as a podcast, and all the other chats that we do, all the other conversations, and it's under Conscious Collective Education. So do go out there, subscribe to the podcast. You can listen to it in your car or when you go for a walk. That's the wonderful thing about podcasts. Hopefully that's helpful for you and your team. So Anja and Lisa, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's been wonderful chatting to you, and we've covered a whole range of different ideas, and it's just been a joy. So have a lovely rest of the evening.
Thanks,
guys.
Bye-bye.
See everybody.
See ya.